Las. Teningani goni mandro jakandani.
Yes.
Ta mando chitando paisa takasang ngelia goni ma control ga nyemu to te tndo sari tanga so konsa chokonam ji songdonga so leka karchena te kyoyo ni tngele shikore te naji control ze ya tnga so semjela ma ke pakar zundu te ngele ngoto chengo res control chena ma ke paso ateli torte zo pinyamle chena pemba yo pati shacheni kolma tanda nyemu to sheyongo reze ndo.
So hello everyone, welcome to today's class. Before in the previous class, we talked about the disadvantages of anger or the bad ways in which anger impact us when it's present in our heart or mind.
Teri sholoka dambat ki deore mando chitando pai keche pali chonjerwas yem devi zihnen na je tantite danjom so zita mando patando pachindi kavla su te control mu pa gazitan dinal data jenim na bi control mu pa gachi shegundu nga so control ke sa tela mu pa ga shegundu nga ran ngala no pa nema chenyons chirawa tanda chir.
So we are now on verse 7, so on page 102 for those that has the book. It says, having found its fuel of mental unhappiness in the prevention of what I wish for, and in the doing of what I do not want, hatred increases and then destroys me. In this verse it says, in the prevention of what I wish for, and in the doing of what I do not want. Here it's talking about the objects of anger. Usually in the Buddhist treatises, we talk about 9 different objects, possible objects of our anger that give rise to our anger. One of them is, for example, someone that we think or something we think has harmed us in the past.
La satani mupagat kanji jakayo reziti pena ngalan mijamba nguma no pa cheson siat tanda no pa chejen bari shas maum pala no pa chegre samni samlo tesamgi jana control zawa chich so no pa chegre samni tan endo ngal ngema no pa cheson tanda chegndo maum pa chegre sammi chole.
So what are these 3 objects of anger? So the first 3 are people that either have harmed us in the past, we think, oh, this person has harmed me in the past, or this person is harming me in the present moment, or this person is going to harm me in the future. So these are the 3 first objects that Buddhist scriptures describe.
Ani ta ngad magasa gachi yora jatalandi yakpo chegundu nema yakpo cheson tanda yakpo chegundu maomba yakpo chegre samba samche. Ani.
And what are the next 3 objects? So not relating to ourselves, but relating to someone we don't like, or as we usually say in Buddhism, an enemy. So we think, oh, this person has done something good for my enemy, for this person I dislike, or this person is doing something good right now to someone that I don't like, or this person is going to do something good in the future to this person I don't like. These are the 4th, 5th, and 6th potential objects of our anger.
Tani sambata nyele jarita jata nyenda ransandala nyenzena hakundo so papa ma pencha tropo tsola yanjo ngema no pacheson tanda no pache dendu maompala no pache sare samba tambo te ranye ni pa te jaro sambata ndaki nyel
ani good. And then the last 3, so the 7th, 8th, and 9th, are relating to people we do like. So the first 3 are related to ourselves. The second set of 3 is related to someone we dislike, and the last set of 3 is related to people we like. So someone has harmed someone we love or like in the past, or it's harming right now, or it's going to harm in the future.
Dan ni katuk chena su korongo chena te mupa gal ran le jag mandu karzeti ngala mando pa che sonze ya chigche ani mando pa chewa ta yana ni le ka yapon che ndona te le parche che ndu sam oteni le jarsha.
Here in this verse it doesn't mention specifically these 9 objects of anger, so he talks in a more general manner of having to meet something we don't want to meet, having to do something we don't want to do, or in the process, during our projects, the things that we want to do, there is an obstacle that impedes us to continue with our work.
아니 yima devi zehni na ji dang ti de dang jom so ze on te zu tu ni kat kar she de wore zena ma so control te ke wa ta ya bul te na kar dang za re da khat de kar semba ma ki na te control za ndu ze wore ro semba ke bo ma
Pulatona ni danzing.
dang za ni ke yo ro control do cha nyo mo sa ma dang za li ke yo re ta tan di kat dang za li ya ma she wa she ti par tu ni ma so control la wi ki ken de kat ni yung du zi semba ma ki pa zo yon di control ke yung du ma to ke po yim bi kabla ga po che na control ke mun du zi.
And in the verse it also says, having found its fuel on mental unhappiness, hatred increases and then destroys me at the end. So when we talk about the origins of anger, the way that anger is born in our mind and heart, if we follow the thread until its ending point, we're going to go to self-grasping, or this very strong grasping at the I. But not mentioning this, we can also say that the condition and cause for us to experience this anger is an unhappy mind. This is said to be the cause of anger. Because when we're happy, we're not going to be angry. This unhappy mind is said to be the cause of anger.
Tani yema devi zehni na je dang ti de dang jom so zi ti son sa samba ma ki wa la yon na ani nga so control la yon du son sa control ze at na yema de wa samba ma ki wa te control kala ta wa je sha ze wor.
So the more we accumulate this energy of an unhappy mind, the more this increases our anger, the more angry we get. So it's said to be, here it says fuel in the Tibetan text, the word can also be translated as the food. It's what nourishes anger, this unhappiness, mental unhappiness. Can you check if it's working? Because it said here that it's not charging. Sorry. Yes, now it's charging the computer. Yes, good.
That's tani sholoka gebatri ata tertar daki jawuti zin namba jombar chan tertar dagla no pali jandla ne le jamais ze ondi tanga so control ke ya ta semba ma ki pacheni control ande yo pa ha ko zona control ga zamat kala ta wa cha de wona tanga so semba ma ki pa ma cha ga ta shi ti go undus.
So the verse 8 says, therefore I should totally eradicate the fuel of this enemy, for this enemy has no other function than that of causing me harm. So what is this enemy? What is this that we want to eradicate, we want to eliminate in this verse, is understanding that this unhappiness, mental unhappiness, is the cause of our anger. Then instead of focusing our attention on the anger itself, we focus on the cause of anger, which is this unhappy mind or mental unhappiness.
Darta dagla no pali jandala na jandame zinga so semba ma ki pachina control ando control ze atanga so jana treshan delanga so ma ki pazoya ma to shen teleka jamba chi command control ze atanga so ma ki pazoya ma to shen koleka ta pento chi command.
For this enemy has no other function than that of causing me harm. Still in the verse 8, this enemy, anger, when we give rise to this in our heart, it doesn't give us any benefit, it only hurts us.
Asota chala wa jamda kin gawi na chukma chama ga chi to manjo gewa ta na nyambar ngerzo so ondi tatani ma ngacho semba manchwa ga tablam de so yongore ngacho donda kandre chigle tigna so semba kepo unchi nya ya ma to sema ma ke wa ta tsawani ni zo ya mandus karzena ngacho ma ke pa zo na ngacho penton chi mandus penton me pa maze gewa ta so nyam tiji le control
Continuing with verse 9, whatever befalls me, I shall not disturb my mental joy, for having been made unhappy, I shall not accomplish what I wish, and my virtues will decline. So, regarding how we should, the way that we should keep our minds, this mental unhappiness, it's not going to help us with anything, and not only it doesn't help us to to have what we want, also our virtues decline. So it's emphasizing that we need to value and keep this mental joy, this mental happiness. We need to focus on not letting our minds become unhappy.
Last, tani sholoka chabatrin the napkin kaina down there yuki kaina the sholoka jando kati chusi yonan de la maga chijiyos and the Carlo the suchet kaina gombat sonan toayor kati chusi yona keta sholoka chabat keta kati chusi yonan de la maga chijiyos kati chusi menan de la maga chij penze ore ta naso leka semba maki pa leka chi pachoni chini ki on di so semba maki wa chi ma lo de gores kar zena tel samlo ni ma to tan samandus kaise tes pacho ko maki wa te gichu chi ta yo ko gichu ta jo da ta re ni lo cha sa res ina ta tin le on di manche sa le gichu ni chi ta me sa mombo chi ro ta nga so semba maki pa konsan chokon di na ma sha so papa ma chong penja chong ro tin di ka ngi chi ka sa ni semba maki wa Akoso ya loan yo marta semba maki pazone che pento komares katip chisu megana tela magachi je pazeta maki pazone ziketum je chika yo mare teli diri ndo amato sonza sem de tembo chi che sho songore magawa maches.
And the first 10 of this chapter is very famous in most monasteries in the world. We can find this written somewhere. It says, why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? Yeah. That's a good pronunciation. Remedied. And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? So if it cannot be changed, yes. So this is a method, an advice for us to be able to keep our minds happy and avoid this unhappy mind. Because when something happens that we do not like, something that can become a cause for us to become unhappy, something that becomes a condition for our unhappiness, there are only two ways of thinking. There are two places for us to think, Shantidevas says. Can we change what is making us unhappy here, or can we not change? If we can change what is making us unhappy, then we should, instead of cultivating this unhappiness inside us, we should try to change this. And if we cannot change what is making us unhappy, and I think that's the case for most things in our lives, so many things, then there's also no benefit in cultivating, in feeding this mental unhappiness. For example, His Holiness mentions here in the commentary that Geshe is reading, when our parents pass away, that's a very strong condition for mental unhappiness. But there is the more we get mentally unhappy about it, the more we cultivate this, it doesn't change the fact. It's impossible to change this fact. They're not going to be revived by cultivating this, and it won't help in anything, and only make things harder if we dwell on this. So his advice is to try not to dwell in this unhappiness with these things.
Kiegum zea de terindo, yani on the saulo tani, tandi choyo mariani on the saulo tani, parishi komshin jayo at the tende insert. Kiegum zea de tendishe or Mupashil tini saulo tani, tangan the tandan the shiat, so saulo mombota, geteng chetina, tonda chuchu chembo karaga kangi chona, geteng saulo tandina, parishite komdi chembo lenita, yaponichiria yosara, matokati.
So Andrew just asked you in class, one of the students said that he understands his point, but when we have an unhappy mind, when we are sad, it's very hard to change this and have a happy mind. Yes, it's okay. Yeah, it's very hard to be happy. And Geshe replied, yes, this is the case not only for unhappiness, not only for sadness, but for every affliction, all of these mental sufferings or mental disturbances that we have. And we need to recognize their shortcomings, why we should try to avoid them, but it's very hard to do this immediately. And I think that's why it's important to do this analytical meditation. What we call meditation, it's a process of habituation. It's creating habit. Even if it doesn't work immediately, by cultivating this habitual thought pattern, this new way of thinking, then eventually when we meet with situations, it's easier and easier to think in this new way. So while it might not be easy to implement these methods at first, the idea is that when our habit gets strong enough, it will be easier.
And the all mati lend or chipasikan or comna la mani patates tinimalian. And so comship the chedena, carhina lapochicha, your resident on water.
And later in the text, it arrives something it's like an answer to this also. Shantidevas says that there is nothing in this world that doesn't get easier with practice or with habituation by becoming a habit.
Ani dikatul konsan chokon in Japan on the current in a decision of Payapun. Dikatunga to legion regum gores, Ani Kiangalam Kirtatonyam legion of Payapores, legion regum the carres in a Marun Denjigo Pashoni King and Banchet in the Market Pachiata, so tende Kiongamatangama Lekacheton Mandua Tindaleon in Segrela, Nemanga Naru, Lekachil Jevachi Yoremato, Tindichio Maritati. Cheondi Kiangalam Kikarche for the Singami Magavi Leg Narmanta so tender kin the Chichon Tini Matandra and Giongeres and the Kiangalam Kikasar Hakosma. Kiangalam Kir. Kiangalam Kira.
And His Holiness in the commentary, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he recommends also one meditation to do when you have to bring unfavorable conditions into the path, which is the meditation on karma. When meeting with something you do not like, something that harms you or hurts you, it might be helpful to meditate on the causes and conditions that brought this about. And especially if you do accept previous lifetimes, to reflect that even though the fact that I'm being harmed right now, that I'm hurt with this, means that I also did something that wasn't right in the past or in past lives. He said that this also can help.
And the pain of consent of the go Mantinji Tabakashi sons, as a Paul around the Yamigazon, the Zongan Juni, Nishit, the Deni, Tendikashi sons, and Zongan Malis on the Tasso, Yana Leg in the Niges, and any Yamlinchi, Gonjan, Tendichini, Zonkana de in the Penyamli upon Rawata, so they help Johnson's and Tendico Kashi sons.
His Holiness also says in the commentary that he has met with people from Tibet, that when China invaded Tibet, they were put in jail for 20 years. And His Holiness says that they told His Holiness that when they got to jail, they thought, oh, it's my karma. It's my karma to be here. So they didn't fight with their new situation. They got in their room, in the place they were. They started practicing, and they had a 20-year retreat. They could practice very well because they weren't bothered so much by it.
Kani lel doctor me pa pendra wayang konsan choko kar sondo zena aso ngema so lengem ba sa na tinje wata so ngel le yore ti ma ke pa che yo mari ze woro tanda ti pendra wata ya ga ki lo pongo mo le jupta arian de wani jando go bol le jupta tamal kanji gomba zo son rezena chik za gel jan za pusha chik chong jan reze ti ngema ko le nje wa yore ze le nje wa le ondi Kyo tamba tenji inaya, za kusha chika kachwan jaka yores. Ani lopo arian dewa yang mukai te cholan dore zengdo.
Compolo con kare namre kare chere.
Sab kushazena nema ti nema to dinanda de logi te shemandu ta nema shia chile ko nema kiwa ngama chile za chewi kaus za kushachi kaus dinanda buse buseres o ti let mata ni la de yores tajima koro za kushachi koro tseso shi shorgi chonrez ni te she.
Yeah, and His Holiness says also that we need to experience the results of this karma. There are stories about Arya Nagarjuna and Aryadeva.
Aryadeva te kyen kai te cholandore.
Okay.
Mi kai cholandore.
Mi
chi te cholandore. On tin gama te so te musin ko ma ni kontra. Tanga so kake chene mu shara chi rin to kai.
So Nagarjuna he passed away. There was only one way for him to pass away because he was a great master, very realized being. But in the past, in previous lifetimes, he had killed an insect with a blade of grass. So the way that he died in his life, in Nagarjuna's life, was with a blade of grass that killed him. And Aryadeva also, he lost one of his eyes because of something he did in previous lives. So even these excellent practitioners, they also need to experience suffering.
Tandanga so control mu pa gatandi ka tishina yas tangang daka takishina la dinga ni ta tsik tsik ta mernya ji chamando te chala te li do piso eta takishia na jere data takishi zeti ngatang ni chopo te so la jewa ni te chopo te so la ta dupo ta yare tsina po la yare si menya ba kar la na teni maso ma ke pa chini chongdoas jata so la te li dote Dachigle Maki Pachona Gagachi, meet the Sodal Kana Potan, Sina Poshina, Jenny Degdoas, Jala Dupochona Ga, Ronda Ranganil Dupochona Maga, and the chicken do, they were at the control move by money and the data tons.
And verse 11 says, For myself and for my friends, I want no suffering, no disrespect, no harsh words, and nothing unpleasant. But for my enemies, it is the opposite. So what we talked about before, about the 9 objects of anger, here it shows them the way that we usually behave. For ourselves, we're very sensitive about anything bad coming our way. We don't want any suffering, no bad words, no criticisms, and also nothing for our friends. But for the people we do not like, we can experience some joy when someone criticizes them, when someone does something unpleasant to them.
Devi Generenga, Dinger Generation, the Mons, Dinger me per name John, Empty of Temper knows it. Tandi, Karasongo is in a tango, Tanga Semba Machipachina, controlling the Semba Machipache, your Marzevora, Tel Carzeti. Maso Chetoni, Semba Machipache, or the Ken that I shoe Mambores, and also Deki on Ken the Union Chiton, Dinger on Ken the Machi to go, Kurichunian Chadores. That's what we shut up a pombo coron dinner jonchi, Yonki can chad the oris, so with our chimbo pombonde, Terry de ora, Yore, or te Teshe de ora,
Verse 12 says, The causes of happiness sometimes occur, but the causes for suffering are very many. Without suffering there is no renunciation, therefore mind you should stand firm. We say that we need to avoid this unhappy mind and we need to cultivate this happy mind, but truth is that there are many different conditions in our lives to have an unhappy mind. They very easily happen, and for our happiness they sometimes happen, and this is we can say this is the nature of samsara. In a way, it's the nature of having this body with blood, bones and nerves, so sensitive to suffering.
Dingar me pangem jo me TV September José Tianjo, Dingar Kachani Saulo Jamba Chikar Tan Giorizina, Dingar Telekoroyan, Yondich Gana Jayores, Karzingatsu Nenjon, they are Ketra Samlo Ketrashimumat, Dingar Liki Yores, Dingar Mando Palatini, Dingar Chiyon, Tigiso Maki Pachinata, Dingar to Mepa Zogundu, Samlo Teo Palatini, and John de Legremato, Matso. Nanchu Chenata, Sandra Wotan, Tenjig Mombochi Kelengura, 고솔 소와 대완로 뭔가 강의시라리아요 말 송상인 좋기 야이 가보요 레세오
But suffering doesn't only have bad qualities to it, bad qualities to it. It says that without suffering there is no renunciation. Renunciation is a very important aspect of the Buddhist path that we need to develop. And suffering becomes an ingredient that nourishes our renunciation. In Buddhism, we talk about different realms of being, like god realms and goddesses, that do not experience the same amount of suffering. They don't have as many opportunities to meet with suffering as we do. And because of this, they don't have the opportunity to develop renunciation also.
나서 손자 내가 탈바다 탐치 김바지야 투고알 자왈 님종 님버팅고 로 님종 장세미 야타 비타와지 테바친 분야린지나 테스트 장고고레 나 테바 총근야린지 코나 테쟁이 지나 님종이 버티요고레 님종면은 조사고 장적부세 메나인 그요리 테바중 무슨 장님 적게 첨보에서 대비 셈죠 담보 주지 소소고 셈다 템보 지지니 다 직강엔로 대진제 온디 연다하고 고레다다
And for us to have what's so valued in Buddhism as liberation and enlightenment, renunciation is a condition for us to experience the joy of liberation, nirvana, and enlightenment. It's necessary to experience all of this, both in the Mahayana path, where it's necessary to have renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness, and also in the vehicle of the hearers and solitary realizers that also need renunciation to experience the joy of the result of their vehicle. So without suffering, it's not possible to have all of these fruits that we're working for. Without working with suffering, and without suffering we cannot have liberation, enlightenment, etc. So thinking like this, if we're able to look more from this perspective, we know it's not only a reason to be unhappy, to be hopeless in the face of suffering, and we can find a way to, through practice, to keep our mind firm, our mind steady on the practice that we're doing.
Tani sholo ka chosumbat leso kardo ta kana pasetan chi so chorwan tome zobche tarbai tond tome zobche sa tarbai tond chepcher tond dako chepcher dar setita de nga so palo konra o chikshe goreta kardo ze ate atinde untanga so hindi lag no yo mari ta jagar kana ma translate chul no Lamo umazia chindo onchik yimda. Onchik yimze kora, onchik Tinal kanjikil. The onchik yim.
Karnapa and you.
Karnapa the cardoze. Sarasi injir, Sarasi maro. Onchik yam the yonita. Lamotel Karel. Hindi chila.
Ishvara?
No, but the wife or the consort of Brahma, I think, in the Hindu mythology. We're trying to remember the name of this.
Cardoze the Colin Shendo, onchik Kaket Dobina, Cardoze Nita, onchik the Konyam, the chance and onchik Yamlin, the Dawson Rezeni, the Koroto in Chulukorosona, Logi Yosa. No, think Cardoze. Takatole tepache, the Karnapazia, Yirkian Komshi, Karnataka, Raja, Consa Jati, Karnataka, Japshan, Terson Karnataka the Indro, and the Injeta Jessica like a song de Yora, or such of the solar, Carci or is it once you could and that Lamol tepache, to so Kashigo, so Lily to push you down in Yavlis, or is Nangema attending to the Consancho Kalush canal. Koso nyamle chinge kashi yuki le wall yam don se some koso don se some chindo ponso
Don se sumlas.
Don se some de mukisali yajan ni kama goni man choni tingolma zerchuni so ranso chegres ranso chetin dong kiku tendenite so ni tendeni aten sona tarbato gres tenji nyamle yores mata tenji dawo tani Tanda Karnapa so lilic dupondra, Lissandra, John, Tendrichin Yamley, Tendrichin Doas, Koso, Tricali Gabding Doas, Matso Tarba Vichet Kali Gavala, Unitonica Casintrana, Zotogo, Duz, in Itati, Tesungori.
Verse 13 says, if some ascetics and the people of Karnapa endure the pain of cuts and burns for no reason, then for the sake of liberation, why have I no courage? Ascetics here, apparently in the Tibetan version, it's referring to some people in ancient India, some practitioners, yogis, I think in ancient India, that venerated the wife of Brahma, which I don't remember the name in Sanskrit, but it was one sect in ancient India, and also the people of Karnapa. And His Holiness here in the commentary, he translated to Karnataka, the South Indian state of these days. Maybe it's the same region. And there were many ascetic practices that harmed the body in ancient India. There was one, for example, where people would commit suicide by falling with their heads on a trident, and the trident would perforate, would make a hole in their head and the two shoulders, and it was believed by the sect that as soon as they died, they would attain nirvana or liberation. And many other different sects at that time used to treat the body very badly, either with fire or with blades, etc. So the argument that Shantideva here is making is, if there are people that are enduring so much suffering, that are willing to go through so much suffering, then for the sake of liberation, if I am someone that wants nirvana, I should be okay with some sufferings on the way. That's his argument.
Tarban road and Jigichet, Kali Javgona, Javsa Sandrochin, Soso, Dig Kalet, Dinarchil Martini, Genchachilina, the knee shoes also load the same, the league dignity or the same Kangamea Yungurese.
And if we're able to see this pain or this suffering, not as just suffering, not just as something that we have to endure and get on with it, but to see it as a condition, as something that we can use on our path, that we can use to develop ourselves on the path, then I think it's much easier. Even though we do have the physical suffering, it's easier then not to have the mental suffering, not to have an unhappy mind, and keep the mind happy, even though we're meeting with problems and challenges and sufferings.
Only then that conscious and the Kona Lower Manjir, Mutinga, your Mayans, Tepcho no Pachon, no Pachimbo, and Jesit and the Julal Nijo and the Tatikongo Shevore, Pena Soso Conjitenjana, Carcarel Conjitina Parshi, La watching Riayores, Roa, Takoso Soso Conchota Lata, so to pitch it the same Ganani Pass, Ranso Cheja, and Gillian Kora Rangatana Ranchen in Dopa Yopa Ranchen in Chejacora, Mijambaji Kosega Yomara, then I was a Tamaso Semgola, Comji Carajitena, Tililawa Yungomarta, comes on a Parshi, Lapori wanted thing, as of sound logo, Chunin was a gonna sound logo, Yundin was a gonna tear his shots. These songs are not so. No pachonko.
And verse 14 says, the verse that I quoted before, there is nothing whatsoever that is not made easier through acquaintance. So through becoming acquainted with small harms, I should learn to patiently accept greater harms. For example, these ascetics that we talked about in ancient India. It's not easy for someone to, even though having faith in their God and their deity, to give their lives, sacrifice their lives in such a violent manner as with the trident to attain liberation. But even that, even something that is so absurd, we could argue, even this becomes easier through habit, becomes something doable that we can do. And likewise, anything that we habituate our minds to becomes easier and easier. We can say that this is a quality of our minds. Our mind has this quality of of making impossible things possible through the power of habituation.
Teo no pachong gube no pachimbo zo parinjir se sonsa nga zo komna la ma ji chunga me sonsa nga zo neka ko no pachong ko idinga ta zo shira masam ni tarba shol ya sablo tani komshi chembo neka ko dingar chunju to so go zom chu gum che thumna se chamala nyawala so pi dingar chembo la zaman jo ata se chama ta yari yari jo ga rewa chembo yore sonsa nga zo neka bli chi mi control on ra wo ta cha chi Sema maki pa karchona ma sozo semba ko yambochi ni semba maki pa machi ni control on masho ni yamle yambochi chetona ani yonchu chu chi ke san chimbo chi la kare de go se ro.
And using this principle, we can use all the small discomforts that we have in our daily lives to accustomate ourselves to be okay with problems or with suffering. So using these smaller sufferings, we can more easily tolerate with a happy mind these bigger sufferings. So, for example, in this life, if we can, the more we can tolerate sufferings, the more we are gonna also be habituated to tolerate suffering in our future lives, as with the hell realm sufferings, etc. So it's keeping our perspective on this practice, we can accept a small suffering in order to have a big profit, so to say.
Last time sholo kani to chikpan chire nyam dama no pa mombo chingon zen cheni te so la na so za na no pa tada zo sen che to gore loko men juma dikki jaman de ya tan de chire ta ton sholo ka re jonga chutunit ta jer tan sha chang da chishkom ki tsora zendwa to so dinga ka je jurzena Dorje ingira na muterte ingira Dorje sha chang zia tanga so tigdang ra wotan ji ani chokho to ka kom ya tan ji ka ni ani yamba zi ti papa na san ro za tu la ro tin na san do tan ji dingar to so nga so legi yoras ro legi res temaza Satang Charpala so Palon so Nasala so Patandigo, Dinganda Mandachi Legreta, Levi Caps, Daki Zere Matava Tester, Chinano Pamiseri, Tazi, Teatangazo Chita, Shiuchina Chiri Masons and Itendic on the Seven Maki Pashuchi Chayora. What the Dimache the atherizing the Zere Mataziat, Zere Machatis. What's on that so the Geshe which is shows on the same Maniam Church on the Sosola no Panteamato Pendo Yo Mares in what the song do the Sanyam the Mashe of Tendrikindo.
Verse 15 and 16 together. Who has not seen this to be so with trifling sufferings, such as the bites of snakes and insects, feelings of hunger and thirst, and with such minor things as rashes? I should not be impatient with heat and cold, wind and rain, sickness, bondage, and beatings, for if I am, the harm they cause me will increase. So we have all experienced sufferings in our lives, such as the sufferings of bodies, such as rashes, and the bites of insects. Sometimes we're hungry, sometimes we're thirsty, sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too cold, we get sick. So many different types of sufferings that that everyone experiences eventually, and the practice of patience here that Shantideva is describing is when we experience these sufferings, we can have the habit of falling into despair of thinking, okay, now it's done for me. There is no hope. It's so hard. That's a strong habit energy. But if we can, but this brings this unhappy mind and brings anger to our minds and brings even more suffering than the suffering we are already receiving. So it's not a response that helps us. So the advice here to practice patience is to habituate ourselves to tolerate this, to be okay with this minor or not so minor suffering, such as insect bites, rashes, the more we can habituate ourselves to be okay with this, to still keep our happy minds with this, the more our patience increases. For if I am, the harm they cause me will increase.
No, tem sarita counter matso dinga karina zo senche tona dinga chembo chong kan don len che to gres zo senche ma to na du jang chi ta za tri chi la na e de ke lon ba kan shu gres ya tere.
So the more we have developed our practice of patience and tolerance, the more we can be okay with this suffering, such as the bite of insects, mosquitoes, etc. If we don't have cultivated our tolerance and patience, then these sufferings, they are going to disturb our mind more.
Tani lala daki chantona partan lak pa changer yos lala janji chantona bo changer ngira yos tate ti kalma pe jeri ngorin de namje te sonala jant pe na namje te sonala ta tani tana chala so sini tini tsuyor te sotona chi parisha karla worizeti mazo samlo tingewa tanjana chlo kolli pol chi kangi chena ya nya chi mandus samlo gewa tama to ne lipol kangi manche na ya semni kangi chengdus perna pau kashi sosol mendan ro ta tenjo japti tali ngari ro ndoas loko tsari tali tan pan chendus kashi le soso menda ta chuni ma poni mi jambal menda ta chja sa zo ko stani nge ro ndoas chani sonsa te sem ge kersore ma to zupo kersore mandu se le tan namje na tantong kashi sem ge kersore na kare samlo tantang sem ge samlo tantang rang ma to zipol trattamento pondi ngoni gegoni tata chagoni de koreta loko chimbo de chagamandus ala daki chantona ze pari ndogreze ote sembu kersola te pegani shegore.
And verse 17 says, some when they see their own blood become especially brave and steady, but some when they see the blood of others faint and fall unconscious. So here he's mentioning how important the mind is to our experience of things. That we usually say that even if our mind is troubled, even if our body doesn't have any trouble, we suffer. But if our mind is not troubled, there can be many sufferings in our body, but we're not going to experience this mental suffering. For example, some people, they say here, it can maybe be translated as heroes or maybe soldiers nowadays. Some of them, when they are hit with bullets or arrows, and they are hurt and they see their own blood, they become more courageous in a way. They become more willing to keep fighting. While other people, even when it's not their blood, they see from far away someone getting hit, they experience this mental suffering. So this is just an example, not promoting war here. It's just an example to show the power of the mind of changing the way we experience sufferings. So we're going to stop here. If anyone has any questions. So
생부 계속라 그래 남.
산으로서?
산으로 소랑 계속.
산으로서.
산으로서. 대만가 요지 마로 옆에 땅아 딱차요 말다요.
저기 뭐야.
계속나서 생부 계속데 산으로 땅 총자고 지레스. 마토 직티즈 본걸 단다 마틴 강게테 되버고 로코치리 직티즈 폴치 간체요 말다 코리로 거리 산으로 땅 쇼랑 레시고.
So Andrew, the student asked a question about the pronunciation of Tibetan of the word Semgikirso, and Geshe explained to him what it means, the word, which is way of thinking, basically.
So, demeanor.
What's the meaning in the dictionary?
Demeanor, way of bearing, it's just...
Demeanor, way of practice. Okay, a way of conducting. Yes, so way of conducting with the mind is thinking.
Simply samtang.
Anyone else has any questions? Okay, so we stop here for today. Yes. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, everyone.